We are live.
Hello, welcome everyone. We really appreciate you tuning in or watching this later. I know everyone's busy the first week after Labor Day, so thank you very much for those that have come. This is our presentations on how we can dismantle structural discrimination, volunteering opportunities. We had the speaker series all last year, and we learned an awful lot, and we are going to continue to have learning opportunities. But we thought that at this point, we'd really like to have to showcase some volunteer opportunities so that folks can actually sign up and volunteer for things. So we've got 4 speakers that we'll have tonight with 4 different organizations, and who they are: Andrew Sarpoulos from the Sierra Club, and will speak first, and then second will be Elizabeth Longley from the Baldwin Center. Third, we'll have Thomas Yazbek from Transportation Riders United. And then last we'll have Stephanie Coomer talking about the Alcott Ministries. So that's what we've got in store for you today. Just real quick, a plug for our next event that we will have is on October 23rd at 11:30. We will have a book discussion on how to be an anti-racist by Ibram Kendi. So that will be facilitated by a professional, from the Baldwin Public Library. And so we will have a registration for that so that we'll know how many, because we'll have like a box lunch or something to go along with that. Also, we have sent out so far just to the congregation, but it will be to anybody that's come to Lean In things as well. We'll send out a link to a SurveyMonkey survey, because we'd like to get input on what folks have thought of what we've done with Matthew 25 so far and what they'd like to see in the future. So to get started, Andrew, please come. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it. My co-presenter, Elaine Elliott, who helps run our water program with Sierra Club, was not able to be here. Unfortunately, she had a rain barrel workshop going tonight. But I did try to incorporate some of that information from last time into the slideshow. And, we were kind of asked when we were sort of pitched this just to come up with some volunteer opportunities. And I kind of mulled over a couple, and actually I'm really just going to share with you one volunteer opportunity right now that I think is really, really critical. I don't know if we can go forward in the slideshow here.
Is it turned on?
Oh, I think so.
Okay, then let me go here. There?
Perfect, yes.
Great.
So let me start with just a little bit about me and sort of our organization for those who aren't familiar. I work for Sierra Club. I've been with Sierra Club for about 9 years. And about 2.5 years ago, I helped found a group called Turn Oakland County Green. It's a coalition and volunteer effort. We've got about a half dozen other partner organizations, including the NAACP and Transportation Riders United, who you'll hear a little bit from in a moment. Some of the groups affiliated with that. But what we are is a coordinated effort to achieve equitable climate policies in Oakland County. Prior to our sort of existence, there were a lot of groups kind of coming in and out of Oakland County. There wasn't, a unified structure, and we had a really, really hostile, sort of set of policies and policy environment for a long time. So, there was kind of an opportunity with a new generation to sort of reconsider what we were doing. And so we saw an opportunity. We said, let's form a group to chart the vision for the future of Oakland County. And we're also one of we just held our first Oakland County Earth Day Climate March Rally and Fair. It was super successful. We're hoping to do it again next year. So it's something else our organization does, is just try to do activities like that to raise awareness. You can see we had, this is in Royal Oak, a couple hundred people marching on Woodward, and we had almost 1,000 people attend for the entire day. So it was really excellent chance for families and folks to come out and learn more and get active. And we also, just as a sort of brag a little bit about our group for a minute and the amazing work our volunteers and folks have done. We had a number of successes in getting the Chief Sustainability Officer position that's now at the county implemented. So that was one of our goals originally. So why volunteer with us? I'm going to talk a little bit about the opportunity at the end, but I kind of want to frame it a little bit first. I think that the work that's going on in Oakland County right now meets a couple of the criteria. I think when people think about volunteering, there's different factors that they consider. At least I know for me, and I volunteer for the environment, but I also volunteer for some other causes. And that's, where can I have the highest impact? What's going to, be successful? Where is there a sense of urgency, and how can I sort of have a sense of community while I'm doing it? And I think what I'm going to talk about here sort of checks all of those boxes, and I'm going to go over why a little bit. Obviously, climate change is the lens I come to a lot of this from. There's really nothing more urgent than that in many ways. We're running really short on time in terms of fixing our climate crisis. We have to make really, really significant reductions by 2030, and we basically have to be off fossil fuels by 2050. So we've got a number of issues going on right now there. And here, I'll just wait for those slides to catch up for a second, because unfortunately my memory is not so good and I don't remember. Next one. Okay, perfect. So the thing I want to say here is that people don't always equate climate change with structural injustice, or they don't see the connections here. And I don't know, how many of you had a chance to see our presentation on that a couple months ago? Raise your hand if you
You mean the one you had here?
Yes.
Yeah, online.
Great. So I'll go over sort of a brief version, but the pitch I really want to make here today in terms of getting involved is that fighting for equitable climate policies, or just fighting climate change in general, has a net equitable effect on society in many, many different areas. There's 3 main areas I want to just cover, and I'm just going to give an example. These are huge, expansive topics, and I could go down a rabbit hole for hours on any of them. But just as a brief primer for those who are not aware, There are effects on health and development related to climate change and climate policies. There are effects on wealth and income related to climate change and climate policies. And there are effects related to climate and livability as well. So what do I mean in some of these examples? Well, when we talk about historical injustice or structural racism in society, we talk a lot about redlining. People obviously, many African-American families, BIPOC communities were historically discriminated against when it came to obtaining housing. We can see here, this is a map of the Metro Detroit area. I don't know if my pointer really works very well here, but you can kind of see where different neighborhoods and census tracts were historically redlined. There's an area up in Pontiac, if we're looking out into Oakland County, lots of areas down here in Detroit. The legacies of these policies have very deep roots in environmental discrimination as well. And I don't think a lot of people make the connection between those two, but I'm going to show you this map and I'm going to show you a couple other maps over the course of this. And I think it might make it a little clearer. So this is energy burden versus historical redlining. And so we take kind of, this is the same region, I've zoomed in a little bit, but you can kind of see in a lot of those areas and census tracts that were historically redlined, the housing stock is older, the incomes are generally lower. That means the housing is very inefficient. And what ends up happening in this situation is that people are spending a much higher percentage of their income on energy, which is then investments they can't make in their health, their education, their well-being in general. And that has a lot of knock-on effects across society at large. And you can just see, I mean, look at 8 Mile right there. Look at the difference between the Oakland County suburbs and Detroit. I mean, this is amazing. You have some census tracts, people are spending 10, 20% of their money on just obtaining energy. This is Oakland County, just kind of zoomed in a little bit. You know, we have some census tracts here that are of concern in Pontiac, especially in some of the southern census tracts. We have folks spending upwards of 7% on average of their money just on obtaining energy because they have older, inefficient houses. And that's bad for the climate as well, because that's emissions that could be avoided if they had the more efficient housing. And this is an overlay of demographics. You know, this is African American, folks who identify as African American, and the energy burden. And you can see a very clear correlation between these two. So the effects of energy burden and income are very closely tied in many ways with where housing has historically been cited, and a lot of the histories of injustice and the legacies that centered around that. So health and development. And once again, this is a very brief primer. We could go down huge rabbit holes, but I'm just kind of giving a very brief overview. Polluting facilities that generate our energy, that manufacture gasoline, tend to be cited more in communities of color. Yep. So you can see here as well, this is the pollution burden that different racial demographics are experiencing. You can see for most sectors, African-American families, those that identify as Black, are experiencing higher burdens of pollution from construction, power plants, industrial sources, cars and trucks, agriculture, all sorts of different uses. And that is true as well for people of color in many sectors. So, you know, the siting of those facilities ended up in those neighborhoods because politically, well, first off, they were built around there and then other folks moved away to have cleaner air. And second off, politically, it's easier to build these polluting facilities in places that are poorer. So they ends up reinforcing itself in many ways. This is the asthma rate, you know, for the tracks that we have it. You can see once again, you know, the legacy of environmental injustice here. Not all of this is polluting facilities, that is a contributing factor, but the old housing stock as well is really important in this because, you know, you get mold in the houses, you get moisture. That's another energy efficiency issue. They can't get the energy efficiency upgrades because they have other issues with the house. It ends up affecting their health, and it ends up affecting their wallets at the same time. And so, you know, I'll talk a little bit about solutions in a minute, but when you go in and address the energy, you can often address health as well and reduce the burdens of asthma. And climate and livability, finally, I want to talk about. There are a couple of watersheds here in Oakland County, and actually we have the most inland counties of any lake or sorry, inland lakes of any county, excuse me, it's been a long day. And this is a tremendous resource right here in Oakland County, but it's under threat because of climate change. And once again, those who are sort of at the lowest rung of the socioeconomic ladder are the ones that are going to bear the greatest burden. I don't know how many of you are familiar with how our water infrastructure works here in Southeast Michigan, but we have what's called a combined sewer system in most places. So basically, all the water that runs off the street goes to one spot, everything you're flushing down the drain goes to one spot, it all has to be processed. If we get really large rain events, which are increasing because of climate change, our most intense rain events are already up 30% according to the EPA. And our annual precipitation on average is up about 10% according to the EPA. So we don't have an infrastructure system designed for this. When we get these massive 500-year flood events, which are becoming more common, the system either has to back up into your basement or it has to discharge directly untreated or partially treated into a waterway. That contaminates the quality of the water. It damages people's homes. It caused over $1 billion of damage in 2014 here in the Southeast Michigan region. And the areas that get it the hardest are those at the end of the system, those in these particular areas, and also those that have the least absorptive surfaces. So, everything's paved over with concrete, everything's, all that natural retention capability has been stolen because we've built over everything. This affects a lot of the poorest communities the heaviest. It damages their homes, their infrastructure. They're the ones least able to pay for it. So we have a legacy of underinvestment in our infrastructure system, but we also have the coming legacy of climate change, which is putting additional stressors in addition to heat on these communities. There's flooding as well. And that affects health, that affects income, all sorts of things. So volunteering, kind of getting back to the grand plan here. There is a solution for all of this, and I'm going to talk about that. There are two big needs at the county level right now. Number one, no one's ever really looked at this from a climate lens. How do we address this? How do we get solutions to a lot of these problems? There's been piecemeal strategies to fix this a lot, but there hasn't been enough funding and the foresight to look at this from a climate perspective. Now there is. So we need to fund, research and looking into these issues more. And we need greater cooperation between communities. You'll hear from the transportation folks in a moment. We have a lot of issues with the system because communities don't cooperate, and it's the same on many different levels. So getting the county to act as a convener to get more communities to do more is really important. So the Oakland County government is proposing a budget for the 2023 fiscal year, which I think is really, really interesting, and I think is a wonderful opportunity for addressing a lot of these problems. Once again, I just gave you a couple examples. This budget enables so much more. There are so many different issues related to environment, but I want to use those examples to kind of frame how this proposed budget that's coming out of the county will help fix inequities and help address climate change. So there's $600,000 proposed directly for climate action planning. And they have a chief sustainability officer already on hand, but that person has to manage the climate response for a county of over 1 million people. And Ann Arbor, which is a city of 120,000 people, has way more staffers. They say they're going to need at least a dozen staffers in Ann Arbor just to do their climate response in that city. So the office has historically been very understaffed, and they're proposing to bring on 1 more full-time person and 2 part-time people. Now, if this could be done, there are a number of programs that could really fix a lot of these structural inequities we see. A few examples, I talked about energy burden. Well, there's a financing gap right now in energy burden. There are people that want to make improvements on their house, but for whatever reason, they can't get the money or the resources to fix the leaky roof so they can get their house insulated. Or if there's asbestos in the attic, they can't install the energy efficiency upgrades. There's all these barriers basically to homeowners getting assistance. They're too wealthy perhaps to qualify for some programs, but too poor to finance it themselves, or they have bad credit. There may be other issues with the home. Oakland County is looking into ways that they can partner with groups like Michigan Saves to possibly find ways to fill that gap and get more assistance to those that need it the most. Saves us all money in the long run, and it helps fight climate change. So if we can get more funding, we can do programs like that. The Water Resource Commissioner is proposing, for example, a huge expansion of green infrastructure. A lot of these communities, they have flooding issues, but they have so many priorities, and then they have to worry about communities' health, it's transportation, it's businesses, and sometimes the money just isn't there. And these communities, they want to be able to fix this problem effectively. And there is a really easy solution, and it's if you build this green infrastructure, you start to use the natural environment again to our benefit. You build these rain gardens, which are like these giant basins that basically, rather than sending the water all the way to Detroit to be processed, we capture it on site and we put it back in the groundwater. I have one in my house at Royal Oak. They work really well, especially in sandy soil. And they want to do a grant program where the county will chip in some money, some other governments will chip in some money, and through a tri-party system, if all three people can chip in money, then it's easier for those communities to invest in that infrastructure. It lowers the cost. And there's lots of federal money. It doesn't cost us anything coming in to do this. And the final thing is funding a clean energy plan. We have, to figure out how to solve climate change at an emissions level. The Oakland County campus is going to be net zero by 2030, which is great. But someone has to plan that, and someone has to figure out how we do that for our communities as well. So there will be a lot of planning coming. They want to do a whole emissions inventory of the county eventually, so we can see who's emitting what and figure out where we can create policies to address it. But all of that's going to require funding. So my pitch to you is that on September 29th, the board's going to be debating the budget, and they need to hear from people that are willing to say, climate is really important. Fixing structural inequities through climate policies is really important. There are two ways to do this. We can, and kind of the way we've done it historically is if you can afford solar panels, you can have solar panels. If you can afford electric vehicles, you can have electric vehicles. But we really need to think about where the emissions burden going forward is going to be. A lot of folks have older cars. A lot of people have inefficient houses. We're not going to get our emissions down to where they need to be unless we consider how we tackle these problems with some of the biggest emitters and the most inefficient emitters. So I think this is a really, really critical moment for the county, and it's a risk. People have come out to oppose some of this stuff in the past, and the voices are getting louder. So the commissioners, they call me sometimes, and they're like, Andrew, make sure you bring out 50 supporters because, we're a little nervous about this. And I'm sure this is not going to be any different. So we really need your voice. You don't have to give a speech, even if you just come to show up, show your support. That's really great. The meeting is going to be the 29th at 9:30, and there will be a public comment period at the beginning. So it's at the Board of Commissioners office. The address is down there at the bottom. If you can't be there, and I know all of us are busy, it's in the morning, you can write a letter. So just find your commissioner. We have a Find Your Commissioner tool on our website. And just, say where you're from, what your address is, say a little bit about why addressing climate is important, why is addressing structural injustice important, and just say you support this budget or, support investing in renewables and climate action. And then if you could let us know, it'd be great, because if we can compile all the numbers of people that sent it and send a summary to all the commissioners, they'll know how many people are actually taking action on it. But it's small things like this really, really do make a difference. So turnoaklandcountygreen.com if you want to learn more. I won't take up too much time because I know we have other excellent speakers. But I just want to thank you again for having a chance to talk a little bit about this. I'll pass around a sheet as well. It's got more information about our website and how you can volunteer if you want to know. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was texting Leslie to see if she could hear. Thank you. Okay.
How do we, if we go to the county commission meeting, how do we make it clear that we're in support and we're not part of the public comment?
So when I go there at 9:30, I will sign up early so I can be one of the first people. And I'm going to turn around and say, everyone that's here for climate, raise your hand.
Okay, great.
So if you don't want to speak, just raise your hand at that part and we'll make it show.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda is Elizabeth Longley, who's online.
Yay! Let me get Elizabeth back in here. And Elizabeth, can unmute yourself? There she is.
I did. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
Yep, please go.
Okay. It's hard because I just lost all of you. I only can see myself. So I'm Elizabeth Longley. I'm the executive director of the Baldwin Center in Pontiac. I believe most people in your church know who we are and have had contact with us at some point. We are located directly across from Hope Shelters and about a mile north of Cesar Chavez. So we are a low barrier human service agency in Pontiac. We're kind of a sleeping giant. We do a lot. We service about 2,500 people a year. We tend to do it very quietly, and we just keep moving along. The pandemic changed. So in the past, what we would do a lot of is the actual traditional soup kitchen. So that has been our biggest program. Again, a lot of your volunteers have probably worked in our soup kitchen at some point over the years. And we had done a traditional soup kitchen where people came in the dining hall, we fed them, and then they left. With the pandemic, we had to change our business model completely. So we have created a carryout system and a drive-up system. So people can either walk up or drive up 3 days a week. And that has worked out really well. And actually, as we're surveying clients, they like that system because it gives them the opportunity to pick up food for their family. It gives them the opportunity to take the food home and maybe heat it up and have it for dinner instead of lunch. And that just has helped everybody immensely. The other thing we did in the pandemic, we were asked at the end of 2020 to feed the shelters in Oakland County. So we took on Lighthouse, South Oakland Shelter, and Hope Shelters. And we were feeding upwards of 3,000 meals a week. It was a tremendous undertaking for us and changed our business model completely. And we have continued. Lighthouse kind of moved off of the emergency shelters. And so we've continued feeding Hope Shelters. And that has worked out really well from a resource perspective. So they don't have a lot of resources to cook food. We serve their lunch and dinner. We do have a lot of help from area churches who help provide sandwiches on a regular basis that we can then distribute for lunch to the shelters. The other program, we have reopened our clothes closet. It is by appointment only for clients and for donations. Again, the pandemic has changed the way we do things. We just have to be very careful about how we collect clothing, what we do with it, how we sanitize the building afterwards. It's, again, you know, COVID just puts a lot of restrictions on us that we've never had. He gave a lot of food to the pantry that was operating out of Oakland University. We partnered with them and gave thousands of pounds of produce and anything extra that we had coming in because we just had an abundance of donations of food. We were one of the few food service groups that stayed open through the pandemic. So everybody was giving us things. So we are back to clothes closet. We are back to our after school program in person. We are back to, again, we're still trying to figure out what the food situation is going to look like, but we're pretty sure we're going to keep with the carry out because it seems to be working and the clients really like it. We are opening our holiday store for the first time in 2 years. We just sent an email out to all area churches about what our needs are for the holiday store. Again, we will have a good 150 people, or actually 100 plus families participating in that, about 1,200 individuals. And people will shop for free and for Christmas and the holidays. And then we have the food baskets that we use, that we distribute for the holidays. We are trying to figure out the gardening process because we cannot find a garden manager. And that's, again, one of our real big needs is we could find somebody who can manage the gardens or volunteers who will work the gardens. We have 7 gardens that we could really have operational. Our biggest problem right now is what every other business and nonprofit is dealing with, is trying to find people to staff positions. We have a couple positions open in our youth program. We start the after-school program again on September 19th. We just finished up our day camp program, which went really well. But we've been virtual for 2 years, so we're just kind of doing the re-entry very slowly. And then we are looking at the laundry services that we've done in the past, where clients can come in and do their laundry for free, but we only have 1 operational washing machine at the moment, and not very energy efficient, Andrew. And we have 2 dryers, so we really need more equipment to really do that well. And then once we can kind of figure it out, we will also reopen showers. It's not been a great need in the community the last couple of years, but we really need to figure out how we're going to reopen showers for people who need to come in and take a shower. So all of these things, again, COVID has just created a very difficult process for us, and we're trying to figure out the way we can move through this. We do absolutely need volunteers for the holiday program. We still need volunteers for the food program. We get donated food on a regular basis that all needs to be sorted and packaged. We have to package food every single day in the to-go containers because we can't serve family style because of COVID. We have to do lots of different processes with food that we've never done before, and we can always use some help. We can use help with getting our youth building back and up and running after summer day camp. It's, a bit of a disaster area. So we can always use help with getting that cleaned up, getting organized and ready to go for September 19th. We are very interested in starting a chess club for the kids. If anyone is interested, we understand how critical strategic thinking is and critical thinking is, and chess is excellent for that. And those are just some of the things that we're doing and some of the things that we can always use help with. Again, it's a big operation. We do a lot of food every week, and we really just need people to understand, even though we're not doing what the traditional soup kitchen was, we still can absolutely use help in the kitchen. Going back for the after school program, we're going to need help in the afternoon from 4 to 6, cooking the meals for kids and serving meals. We serve them a hot meal at 6 o'clock before they go home. And then the other thing we offer is that if their families, when they come to pick the kids up, they are welcome to have that same hot meal to go, and they can take it home for their family. So those are the types of things we are doing. I don't know if there's questions, or I know that I had sent a list to, the one other thing we do absolutely need right now, we have this huge commercial dryer that is just massive. So if or would like a challenge, we have one for you.
Can you say that again?
I'm sorry,
About
what?
Can you talk about the dryer again? You sort of cut out.
Do you need to have it
Oh,
fixed?
she's frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have this massive commercial. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
You can hear me? We just have this, okay, we have a huge, massive commercial dryer that doesn't work, and we need to dismantle it and scrap it. So we're looking for somebody who might know how to do that, or would like to learn how to do that by doing it.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, I know that you have applied for, thank you guys for
Yeah.
being here
Thank
tonight.
you, Andrew.
That you have applied, I think, for grants from the deacons here.
Yes.
But First Foundation, I think, might be interested in helping with your washers and dryers.
Yeah.
Great.
So, Bethany, should she get in touch with you, me?
Yep, I'll reach out.
Okay, Reverend Bethany will reach
Wonderful.
out to you about that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
And Elizabeth, for the folks that help with the food, sorting and everything, what are the hours for that? And is it on site at Baldwin, or is it something that people do off-site at their own church and then bring it?
No, the food that we do, the production food and the sorting is all on site at Baldwin. And we're operational Monday through Friday from 8 to 4. So any time in those timeframes, we can use help. The food service is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, where we actually serve the community food. But we serve Hope's food. We process it 6 days a week, so we can always use help with that.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the room or online?
Okay.
Bethany, can you see
There's nothing online, no.
nothing online?
All
Okay.
right, thank you, Elizabeth.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
All that
Very
you do.
All right, next, Thomas, would you like to go and tell us about Transportation Riders United?
Yes. And I need to share my screen.
Where's the clicker?
I'm gonna have to do it from mine, so if you'll just give me like a thumbs up or something.
Okay. Should I stand right here?
You can aim it wherever you stand.
That's good, though.
Yep, that's a good spot.
Okay. We're getting there. Mode.
Okay, so I had a few technical difficulties, so the PowerPoint it's not the version that I want, but it should impart the same information that I want. My name's Thomas. I'm with Transportation Riders United. We've been working on
And make sure you're talking to like the back of the room.
to the back of the room.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
We have, how many people are watching online?
We got 14 right now.
Wonderful.
Nice.
So we've been working for 20 years to improve public transportation in Metro Detroit, or as some would like to say, Southeast Michigan. And so I'm here to talk about sort of a little bit about what's going on with the transit needs that we have in Oakland County, the services that are available, and the ballot funding measures, which you will be likely voting on this year in Oakland and Macomb counties. So if you can go to the next slide.
Is that it?
There you go. There's some animation here and it's not working because of it, but that's fine. So who needs public transit, right? So
Everybody.
everybody needs it, right? So we have lots of these photos are designed to sort of give a little impression about who uses public transit. Senior citizens who maybe past the point where they can safely drive use public transit. People that have disabilities that can't drive use public transit. People who can drive but want to save a little money or save a little hassle, choose to ride the bus. New immigrants that may not have enough money to buy a car yet, and students, people like that, all kinds of people. As you go to the next slide. And another big issue, as Andrew mentioned earlier, is climate change. And this is some pretty shocking image of the freeway being flooded in Detroit. I think it was what was that, like last year? Last year, right? And so our transportation network, it depends on, public transportation is so important, and it's a more efficient way of getting around than everybody driving their personal car. So the more public transit we have, transportation being one of the largest sources of greenhouse gases, the more we can fight climate change. If you go to the next slide. So even if you don't personally ride public transit, which I would say, unfortunately, most people in Metro Detroit do not, we still depend on the essential workers who do use public transit. And there are people like nurses, retail workers, all kinds of people who do depend on public transit, and those jobs are critical. Next slide. Now, SMART provides an essential public service, as I've harped on a bunch. It's not adequately funded. Most other metro regions, even suburban style agencies like SMART spend a lot more money on transit than we do, and they do a much better job of providing the service. But it still provides rides to tens of thousands of people every single day, and that comes out to millions of people every year that ride the bus. These images kind of show, I'll go into a little more detail about what exactly the services are, but you got a fixed route bus and you got a paratransit bus. Paratransit means transit for people with disabilities and seniors. This map is a little blurry, but it's a good map that sort of points out the green are the Detroit Department of Transportation bus routes, the red are the SMART ones, the thickness indicates sort of the frequency or level of service, and then the green and yellow splotches represent population density. And there is a lot of population density in sort of this part, sort of the area close to the city of Detroit, but there are also bunches of population density that are not being currently served by public transportation. I'm going to go into a little more detail about that as we move forward in the presentation.
Thomas, could you point to Pontiac on that?
Oh yeah, so Pontiac is right here this is Woodward Avenue. So Pontiac is here. And I'll go into some more detail about why this map looks the way it does. We have lots of areas which are not currently served by public transit, but have a lot of population. So if you go to the next slide. So this is kind of another big blurry map, which overviews the SMART system. Don't need to really look at it in too much detail, but this sort of gives an indication. So SMART has really, most people probably think about it as the big buses that run up and down major roads like Woodward, but there's more to it than that. So most of these lines in the map that you can see are bus routes. You have local routes, which generally stop every few blocks. The buses tend to look more like this. You also have the fast routes, which go in and out of the city of Detroit. And stop only every mile or even less than that for a faster ride. They'll have this kind of paint scheme usually, and some of them are the extra big accordion-shaped buses. You also have some other services. So there's a service called Flex, which has a distinct branding, which works a lot like Uber. Yeah, and sorry for the screen doing that. I don't know what to do, but these purple areas in the map are the places where Flex is available. Pontiac is one of them, Troy, Fryerington, Dearborn, and Hall Road. And those areas are sort of a test to see if we can deploy that service more widely. And there are also connector and community services, which a lot of that serves the ADA disabled population.
Sorry.
So if you could go to the next slide real quick. But unfortunately, these services aren't available everywhere in the region. So since 1995, which is when the first millage to fund the system was introduced, Macomb County voters, so the areas in green are the places which participate in SMART on this map. I've labeled some interesting areas on this as well. But the green area is the places where the community participates in SMART. Macomb has always been a block. But in Oakland and Wayne, it's city by city. Some cities participate, others don't. And that leads to some really crappy situations like Bloomfield Hills. The city of Bloomfield Hills is surrounded entirely by cities that participate in SMART. SMART buses can't stop in Bloomfield Hills to pick up or drop people off. You have communities like Walled Lake is part of SMART, but surrounded by communities that aren't part of SMART, which isolates people. And then you have some communities like Livonia and Rochester and Waterford and Novi, which have a lot of population, a lot of attractions, but they don't have really many public transit options at all. So that's kind of been a big stumbling block for people getting where they need to go. Next slide. Now, and so in these places which don't participate in SMART, there often is public transportation available, but it's very limited. The North Oakland Transportation Authority, for example, which I don't expect you guys to remember all this information, but this just shows you have the North Oakland, West Oakland Transit Authorities, which serve certain townships. The Older Persons Commission serves the Rochester area. These have limited areas where they go. They have limited hours of operations, usually no evening, so they stop at 4 p.m. Like you can't get a ride after that. You
Dream about weekends.
and they don't have some of them, like I just talked to the director of the OPC, they've stopped offering service on Sundays because they don't have the resources for that. So anyone that wants to go to church and they can't drive, they can't do it. And these are only for senior citizens and people with disabilities, and they often have restrictions on, people under 18 who use them. And most critically, they have to be reserved 5 or even more days in advance, which means that you cannot use them to commute every day, every weekday to work. You use them, if you're a senior that would otherwise be trapped in your house, you use that to go to the doctor's appointment once a month. That's how that works. They do great service, but they are not enough for the communities they're in. Next slide. But there's big changes afoot. For the first time this November, public transit will be on the ballot countywide in Oakland County. So big changes ahead, which I think are positive changes. If you go to the next slide. It's been called the Connect Oakland Plan by the Oakland County Commission. So every 4 years, the funding for SMART has to be put on the ballot before voters. And the wonderful thing about this year is that in Oakland County, the entire county will participate in SMART. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do the same with Wayne this year, but the entire county will participate. We need to pass this in order to keep SMART. It has to pass in order to keep SMART services running, but it'll also bring new services. It'll provide dedicated funding for SMART and those 3 transit agencies which serve parts of the county. And it'll extend transit options across the county. So paratransit, these are terms that I think would be good to memorize. Is paratransit is services that are usually curb to curb and advanced reservation. So you call ahead and pick it up. Those are especially for people with disabilities and seniors who can't might not necessarily be able to ride a regular bus like that. You have microtransit, which is like on-demand services that work like Uber kind of. You call it and it comes within a matter of minutes as opposed to calling ahead days ahead. That can connect people that are in less dense areas, or if they, if your area is kind of like a last mile option, or for areas they have just doing local trips. And then you have the fixed route buses, which is sort of the main thing, which is it runs on schedule, has designated stops, all that. It'll eliminate gaps in transit access. So everybody will be able to get where they need to go in Oakland County. There will be no communities that don't have any sort of public transit. And it'll also have, in addition to expanding to new areas, it'll also have capital funding to improve current services. So increase their frequency, how often the buses come, maybe make their operational hours longer, that sort of thing. And it'll also be a 10-year millage, which means that we won't have to vote on this again for 10 years, which allows the agencies to do a lot more long-term planning. Next slide. And so just to give you an idea of some of the potential bus routes we could see, what's not pictured here is the expansion of paratransit and microtransit services, but this is the fixed route picture. So over the next few years, with input from communities as needed, we'll see all the blue lines on this map are the new bus routes. We could see the orange are the existing service. There'll be a lot of destinations which have attractive destinations, have sufficient density and need from demographics to have new bus routes. So places like Rochester will have several routes. There'll be route to Orion and Oxford. Bloomfield Hills buses will be allowed to stop there. Novi, all different corners of the county. And obviously this not only helps these communities, which are getting bus services for the first time in a long time, but it also helps existing communities like Pontiac and Royal Oak. You can see these routes greatly make it easier for people that live in these areas with established SMART service to get to more destinations. So that's kind of the picture that we're looking at. Next slide. And it'll expand these paratransit services, which exist already in a lot of places, but it'll strengthen them. They'll be able to run more service, run more hours, so they'll be able to pick people up on Sundays. They'll be able to go later in the day, that sort of thing. These types of services will be available everywhere. There are some communities like Kago Harbor and Bloomfield Hills that just don't have any of this. enabling connections between them. So if you don't live in these communities that they serve, you can't use them. There won't be that restriction anymore necessarily. So basically the goal is that senior citizens should not feel trapped inside their homes because they can no longer drive. I mean, I know a lot of people who are currently living like that, and that's just not fair. Next slide. So if you want to learn more, to learn more about the smart services, you can go to their website. If people ask you, how do I ride the bus, that sort of thing. I wanted to have more logos and stuff on this slide, but again, but visit our website, detroittransit.org. Look up Keep Smart Rolling on Facebook. That's our campaign page. If you want to volunteer with us or have questions for me, email info@detroittransit.org or thomas@detroittransit.org. That's my email. And I also had another slide about the specific ways you could volunteer. So I'm just going to kind of speak about that off the cuff. So, obviously, if you support public transit, you can vote yes on the public transportation question. It'll be at the bottom of your ballot. But there are other things that you can do. So one thing is tell people that you know, tell people in your community. I actually have a sheet over here which I'll pass out, which is a feedback form, not only about my presentation, but there's also a question. I encourage you guys to fill out both sides because I want to know which other community groups I can talk to, because I'm doing talks like this all the time. I just did one yesterday. I'll be doing another one this weekend. I want to talk to different community groups and let people know about public transportation.
Thomas, can you mention the town hall that we just got the email this evening about?
Yes. So I think, are you referring to the disability town hall?
That, they're having a meeting next Tuesday?
Yes.
Megan Owens sent out a note
Yes.
this evening.
So next Tuesday will be a Zoom town hall. That's the 14th, right?
Today's the 8th, so
It's, let's see.
that sounds right.
Yeah. So that will, yes, there will be a online town hall, which I encourage you guys to attend. I can try to provide some more info about that for folks. We'll have another town hall that's more oriented towards Macomb County. It's in Warren on the 20th at Macomb Community College South Campus. So we're always having events like that. So what we would appreciate help with is finding other community groups that we can educate, that we can talk to, that might want to host us or help have an event that we can participate at. We set up tables at a lot of community events. So we just had a table all 4 days of Arts, Beats, and Eats, getting people signed on and educating folks. So if you know other groups that I can give these lectures, we call them Let's Talk Transit, to, that would be great. But also we need volunteers. If you're, especially if you're in an area that a lot of our volunteers are concentrated sort of more towards the center of Metro Detroit. So if you guys know if we are, we'd like to go out to community festivals and events like that and have tables. So if you guys want to come help with those types of things, that type of volunteer is also appreciated. And of course, we also appreciate donations, which are tax deductible as well. I have to beg for that, of course. But yes, there's a lot of ways that you can get involved and volunteer because, even after November, public transportation is not an issue that we've solved in Metro Detroit. There's gonna be more things to work on. And so getting in touch with True Transportation Riders United is a good way to stay in that fight if that's something that you wanna help achieve here. So next slide. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say. A cute photo, right? The future of transportation.
So you're saying now that they can't opt out?
Right, yeah, I think this means we're.
See, that was the discussion that a couple people who are smart drivers were talking about recently at church, was saying, well, they can still opt out.
So I think we're officially in Q&A mode now, yeah.
So they're saying not this time,
Right, so
if it passes.
do you mind putting the last slide back up just so people can see the contact info? And if you guys want to write that down, encourage it. So yes, basically, I shy away from using the term opt out, but that's basically what this will do in Oakland County is that no community will be allowed to opt out of bus service. So every single city, township, and village will be paying the same rate for public transportation and getting the same types of services available. There would be no places that are impossible to get to, because there are places where it's basically impossible to get to. It may not be easy to get to every place, because there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to get service back to where it should be, because COVID's wrecked a lot. But that's the goal, is that there should be, if you live in one corner of Oakland County, you should be able to get to the other somehow using public transit. That's sort of the goal with this.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
Thank you.
Will any of those new bus routes go out to the airport?
So that's in Wayne County. I will say there's, right now, so if you wanted to get to the airport right now, you would go on the Fast Woodward route, go downtown, and then transfer to the Fast Michigan route. It's a long trip, but it's fairly simple. The issue is, of course, that it's a long way from here to the airport. So there may be, public transportation needs to serve a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And, people need to get to the airport, just one class of people. But there are services, for example, if there's money for it, or if there's a need for it in a certain community, some of the community partnership programs, which is basically services that a city or township provides sort of on top of the basic smart services, they could have something like an airport shuttle. And there could also, so that's certainly something, if that's a need that you think is important, that's definitely something that you should bring up to your elected leaders, to your, to the leadership at SMART, for example, to say, hey, there's an importance there, because certainly people will say, the bus route that goes to the airport doesn't run 24 hours. So sometimes you can't make it. So like there's money that Oakland County is setting aside that will allow for capital improvement, which would include increasing the operational span of routes so that they run maybe 24 hours a day or something like that.
Will that help with the Sunday service that we got dropped? We don't have Sunday service anymore in
this area.
Not very good anymore. It took it away.
Yeah, so that there will be more resources available to improve services, in addition to adding new service in new places. This will be a big help. The millage that's going to be on the ballot has to be passed in order for in Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb to keep SMART going. But in Oakland, it's expanding through the whole county, so there will be more resources available to improve service.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Real quick, Pat Hammond, Hammers, I'm sorry. Pat, you've advocated for transportation.
Yes, I've advocated for about 15 years or so. I've worked with True and with Moses and my own church and so forth.
And you're with the Unitarian Church?
Unitarian Church.
Yes.
Now, we're an example of an opt-out area.
Oh,
We can't
yeah.
get to church.
But a church is trying
Because
to
we're in
change it.
Bluefield Hills. And Bluefield
Oh,
Hills is
man.
an opt-out community. And there's always been some people in our church who live down Woodward Avenue and would love to take the bus up
Mhm.
up the street to go to church, and they can't get off in Bluefield Hills.
Yeah, it's
So
like,
that's just kind of an example
from my
of
end
what
of
this opt-out situation does.
from my end of it, it's a little hard to believe that the library for the blind and physically handicapped is in Rochester Hills, so you can't go there.
Yeah.
It's a little bit screwy,
Well, we'll get the vote out and we'll
Yeah.
get you to be able to go there.
And leader dogs can't use the services to get anywhere
Oh, my.
for their training.
Yeah, I've talked to some folks from Leader Dogs, and they're fully on board with transit, because they need that, But for 30 years, their city hasn't listened.
Right.
But I have some resources over there on the table as well. I have a sign-up sheet if you guys want to give me your contact info so we can stay in touch. I have 2 handouts as well, which you can take multiple copies of and give to people. One shows the map of the routes, and the other is kind of a more general handout. So I encourage you guys to come over there and grab some of those resources.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie, you're up. And thank you, Pat, for coming. We can chat afterwards.
Okay. Look at this. Hold on.
I brought note cards because I can get going on Alcott because it is such a passionate thing for me. So I'm trying, if I get going, just tell me to stop. But so Alcott Elementary and First Presbyterian Church has had a partnership for about 16 years. We started this way back in 2006. And, oh, sorry, let me get the clicker. Thank you. We've talked a lot, sorry. We've talked a lot about the Pontiac area tonight from different facets. And like I said, it started back in 2006 and through not only from funding from our church, but we've had other grant opportunities that have helped increase our programming and what we're able to do at Alcott. You'll see some of the things up there, field trips pre-pandemic, Skyline camperships that have really benefited some of the youth at Alcott. And we also have art therapists from FAR that have been able to go back. They actually started back up again last year and hope to go back this fall. The library at Alcott was not functioning prior to our time there, and with the help of some volunteers from church, that is now up and running in a different format, which I'll explain soon. And then there's been a bit of a decrease in enrollment at Alcott since the pandemic. So class sizes, well, they're big, but there's only now one class per grade. So even though, you know, at its heyday, enrollment was about maybe 380. It's down to just about 200 students right now. And with the pandemic and the shifting of the population, there was some opening in the building. And so the International Language Academy moved in there last year. They will be in there through the end of this calendar year. And then they'll be able to, hopefully Alcott will have their building back. So I'm going to highlight some of the activities that the church is involved in and ways you might be able to get involved. Flag Star Bank has been able to provide backpacks for each student since, I think it's been going on 6 years now. We had them deliver this. These are hot off the press, these photos. We just did this backpack rally a couple weeks ago. And the joy on these kids' faces it was priceless. So I wanted to highlight that, even though that's not, the backpacks isn't something that we as a church pack, we had volunteers from the church there to help distribute the backpacks. In September, and again, this was last year, we were able to get some funding for uniforms for the students. So every student in the building got 2 pairs of pants and 2 shirts, a long sleeve and a short sleeve shirt. Again, it was a volunteer opportunity for folks to come out and help hand out the uniforms. And then we also did some beautification around the school by planting some planters in the front, and then you'll see the tomatoes and the cucumbers. The end of the school year prior, we did a little planting out in the courtyard. And again, I'm always looking for volunteers to help with that. And those were some of the little cherry tomatoes and zucchini that we harvested from that effort. In October, we have a couple of activities that start. Our Shop and Drop program has been going on for a number of years, started in 2012. And that is a program whereby you shop for, this year we're going to hopefully shop for 20 families. We buy what we hope is a balanced meal for at least one meal for that family for the weekend. The shoppers go to the grocery store, they buy 20 of everything, and then at the school it's split so that 20 children will take home a meal in their backpack. And that we do that each week, and the church helps fund that. Tutoring, we wait until October usually to start tutoring, because it allows the students to get into a routine at school. It gets the teachers the opportunity to learn the students' strengths and maybe put them in reading groups or determine where they might be at a certain math level. We also have some folks that like to read to the students. So you'll see this picture of Matt Howell, a church member who's reading to the kindergarten classes, and they're very excited when anybody comes in from the outside. So here's some more. So as I mentioned, last year, the International Language Academy had to move into the building due to some work at their building that wasn't quite done. So Barb Lindenbrink and her team of media volunteers moved the library, took all the books off the shelves and put them on movable carts. So this year, or this past school year, those movable carts are in hallways, and Barb and her crew will go in and pull books and take them to classrooms so that the kids still can get the different genres of reading materials. The students actually also are able to check out books. Hang on, let me talk about the other two spots here. Now, I have to admit that the picture of John tutoring is from pre-pandemic. That's why they're
Yes,
not
that's
wearing masks.
pre-pandemic, yes.
But even our minister is out there helping. When the pandemic was going on, we heard that there were some students that really needed a spot at school, or at home, I'm sorry, for learning. They didn't have a table or a chair, so our church was able to find some funding to provide small tables and chairs for the kids. So we had some church volunteers, again, go out and assemble the desks, and then we delivered them to the houses. So back to the library for a minute. You'll see Barb down there in the corner, and that was when they were getting all the books off the shelves. But she has done a wonderful thing. Each child, you'll see on the slide, has an index card with a barcode. So when they want to check out a book, they scan that barcode, scan the barcode on the book, and that child has that book for a week. And it gives them some responsibility to keep track of where that book is. Sometimes with the younger students, they keep the book in the classroom just so it doesn't, fall into the vacuum at home. But then they also had book giveaways this past year. The Pi Phi alumni group has just been amazing in soliciting grant money. So they've done that, I think, the last 3 years, and have acquired funding for over 500 books to be purchased for the school. And then in November, this is something that's, I think, it gets a lot of people at the church involved. We do our baskets of love, and we'll buy food from Aldi, and that's what's up on the pallets. We bring it to the church, and then the church family comes through and we pack the big bins. Then we take the bins out to school, usually about a week before Thanksgiving, so that when it's parent-teacher conferences, the parents come in for their conference. On their way out, they take a bin and take it home, and then they've got food for the Thanksgiving break. The nursery, and again, this is all people just come up with ideas as to how to help. So Heidi Wilkinson and her hand-in-hand program, the preschool at the church, for Thanksgiving, they actually pack little snack bags for the students and the family. So they pack upwards of 150 snack bags for the kids, and they decorate the bags, and it's a really neat outreach for the preschool children to feel a part of the Alcott community as well. I also have tried to do small little encouragement gifts to the teachers during the year. So we've done prayer squares, we've done little things of honey for being so amazing. We've done spring flowers for them. So it's just a way so that the teachers know that they're appreciated just as much. At Christmas time, we do an angel tree here at the church, and folks are able after church to go pull a tag and then shop for children and then bring the gift back to church. And then usually the week before the Christmas holiday, the gifts get delivered out to the school along with another basket of food for the parents. Again, a wonderful outreach, and the school does identify the children. Usually we've been doing upwards of 35 children the last few years, and they again, the school determines who those kids are. They usually know they're the ones that might not otherwise have Christmas gifts. January, we deliver our hat and mitten tree, and we do it in January so that when the kids go home for winter break, if they happen to lose their hat or mittens, when they come back to school, they've got a new set going in for the rest of the winter. We've been able to get funding for pajamas and socks for each of the students. We've done that the last few years. And then last year, the principal actually had a pajama day so that the kids could wear their pajamas to school.
Oh,
Yeah, and we've got a couple of volunteers that pack, get all the pajamas ready for distribution. And then in the spring, we've done, again, some more plantings to beautify the environment. And then this past year, we were able to do the Science Alive program. We had it at church here, and we got funding to do it at the school. And the Science Alive folks went into each classroom, and the kids' eyes were like saucers when they saw these. I mean, that's a boa constrictor, not a boa constrictor, a python. Yes, Siamese python. They had a little alligator and then a sloth.
oh, wow.
I had never seen a sloth up close. I mean, it was hanging from her arm. It was, the kids could touch them if they wanted to. I chose not to, but that was just, but we've actually already scheduled that for the kids again for next spring. They'll be back out in May of next year, but it was just fun to watch the kids' expressions on that. And then I just tried to list some of the events I've talked about, plus some other things we've done. We did some food distribution during the pandemic, which we would go to Forgotten Harvest through the pantry lines and then split the food up. That's what you see the pictures of. We had drivers volunteer to go deliver the food to the folks in Pontiac. Again, it's, I could go on, but that list is there. We've had holiday lunches. Rosie Lattimore has done that pre-pandemic. I'm hoping someday we can get back to doing that. It shows a lot of appreciation to the teachers and staff. And I'd say probably our biggest perk is the tutoring. We try and have at least 2 tutors in every classroom. I try and do a small training session for any new tutors that haven't ever been out there before. The teachers do try and give the tutor what they're to work on with the students. So it doesn't, you don't have to prepare anything as a tutor. You just show up to school and work with your teacher, and it's a very rewarding experience. So I'm always looking for new tutors if you're interested. Oh, and I do have a page with my contact information.
So what days is the tutoring?
The tutoring is any day that works with your schedule and the teacher's schedule. We do it during the school day. Some programs I know have done an after-school tutoring program, but ours is during the school day. So you're welcome to choose, like I try and match what your request is for grade level and subject matter with the appropriate teacher. And we typically would go in the morning. Most tutors go in the morning because that's when the kids are freshest. And it seems like I don't want to say the best learning happens then, but that's usually when the kids are the most fresh.
Fantastic.
Questions?
The deal with the reading, do they actually have people who do that on a regular basis, or is that just
Read to the class?
sometimes, or
Oh,
reading to the students?
you could do it whenever.
Well,
It's-
that would be something I could do.
Yeah, that would be
I think
awesome.
it'd be nice.
That would be great. They haven't ever done like a really mystery reader type program, but they really welcome people to come in and read to the students. Yeah. That is that literacy connection that they might not get that at home. So they always stress that it's really important to read to your children. So if that's an interest, please let me know.
Yeah, well, the
Fantastic.
tutoring would be a difficult thing. I think.
Might be, yes.
Well,
But
unless
if you
they had VI students that needed it.
And I don't think we do, or they do,
Well, that's great.
but yeah.
Good.
Thank you, Stephanie, because you honcho this thing. I know you have lots of volunteers, but you honcho it, so thank you.
My pleasure,
For
my
doing that.
pleasure.
It really is an amazing program.
Well, and it just keeps
Getting bigger.
blossoming, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bethany.
Question online, do tutors have to be available consistently every week?
Not necessarily. There are some tutors that are the snowbirds that might leave for 2 or 3 months during the winter. And if that's the case, I try and then match at least a tutor that will be there all year long. I don't want to say, no, you don't have to be there every week. As long as you communicate to the teacher what your availability is, that's all they ask. Even if it's just once a month, that's okay. Oh, and we do require a background check. If you do want to tutor, the Pontiac School District requires one, plus because it's a program that runs through our church also requires a background check.
And usually the only thing that comes back is that someone's stolen your identity. So I always say, let us background check you because we find more people stealing identity than anything else.
During COVID, did they do anything virtual?
We tried, but there's no blame to put. There were a lot of issues with technology and even just some homeowners not having access to the internet. They did try to do some things, like they put up a huge antenna, I think, on the school property because so many of the students live close to the school, but there were just sign-on problems. And we did try, but it just didn't materialize. Yeah. Hey, Dexter.
Yeah. Is there, I haven't obviously been there, but I never picked this quite up. Is there any, are there openings for, shall we say, small group interactions? And I'm thinking, when you get a small feedback at a science fair or a play or a musical group, and the kid maybe can possibly get the spark, or the individual, the mentor can give it to them more directly. But it's different from helping the teacher, teaching to read, that's fine, but you never really know if it works, you know? So these, I don't call them extracurricular, but in fact, they're full of teaching moments, like a game club, an art club. Is there any of that at all that you could help with?
A few years ago, they tried an enrichment day where they had students sign up for blocks of time. And I want to say that it was maybe once a month on a Friday, and the kids would sign up. I think it's a great idea. With the pandemic, we weren't in the building very much. I am always open to ideas and would love to talk either more about it with you.
It's almost world hunger out there. I realize that. And then it's about the time you think about that, you realize our colleagues, in places like Cranbrook, that's what their days are all about.
Yeah,
So,
but somebody
how
mentioned,
is there anything we could possibly imagine and help them with?
there might be. That somebody mentioned something about a chess club, and I wrote that down because I wonder if something like that. It's hard to do anything after school with the kids because of a transportation problem. But I'm more than willing to talk with the principal and get some ideas going. I think that's a great idea.
Maybe the kids, now shut up. Maybe if they go like a Boys and Girls Club or some block place or Baldwin that knows how to handle it.
Right.
We go from here on the bus to there, and then we go there and do something.
There is something called Accent Pontiac that's been going on, which is a drumming and a music program that Alcott has been involved with now the last 3 years, which does get some of the older kids involved in something outside of academics. Yeah. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Just give her an
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that was the last.
Elizabeth just said that some of the kids from Alcott go to their after-school program.
Fantastic.
Okay, great.
Fantastic. So we can continue it, we can make that bridge, and that'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
To do that. Good. So we've heard from the 4 presenters today. Yes.
No,
Oh,
sorry, I'm
you're saying-
waving at Tony, not you, Janet, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you very much for coming. I
Yeah.
think we've learned a lot today, and I think that we've made some really good connections. We'll talk to Pat in a minute and offline. And if you've got any more ideas like this, please bring them. For Matthew 25, we're looking for ways that we can make a difference, right? And I think that this is a good start. So,
It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
yes,
very,
thank
very
you very much for coming. Those online, we thank you for your time and for you to come out here today. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, have a good night.
Good night.